Rain hammered the streets of London that night, blurring neon pub signs into streaks of red and gold. The air was cold enough to bite, and the wind carried the distant hum of late-night traffic. But here, in the narrow alley behind the King's Crown pub, there was no hum, only the sharp thud of a body hitting the ground, followed by cruel laughter. An elderly man, no older than 75, lay sprawled in the puddles. His wiry frame, slightly hunched from the years, was drenched, the thin fabric of his coat clinging to his back. His silver hair was plastered to his forehead, rainwater dripping down into his tired, fearful eyes. He tried to lift himself, but the weight of exhaustion and pain pressed him back toward the cold, uneven bricks. His hands, long-fingered but trembling, scrabbled at the slick surface, seeking any kind of support. A few feet away, his cane lay abandoned. It wasn't just a stick of wood. It was part of him, polished smooth over decades of daily use, the handle worn into a gentle curve by his grip. Tonight, it had been kicked from his hands by one of the two men now looming over him like predators over fallen prey. They weren't kids playing at being tough. They were in their early 20s, brimming with the raw, careless arrogance of youth combined with the dangerous edge of men who had never been taught limits. One had a buzz cut so sharp it looked like it could cut glass, his knuckles littered with crude tattoos, letters, numbers, maybe gang marks. His eyes gleamed with the thrill of control, a kind of manic excitement that came from making another human being feel small. The other was taller, lanky, with a pale, hungry face. His grin wasn't joyful, it was the grin of someone savoring the moment before pulling wings off a fly. He shifted his weight lazily, like a cat toying with its prey, letting his heavy black boots splash through the puddles without care. "Where's the money, old man?" the buzz-cut one barked, his voice slicing through the rain. Without waiting for an answer, he yanked the pensioner forward by the collar, forcing the frail man to meet his stare. The old man's lips trembled, but no words came. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. "Don't play dumb with me." The thug slammed him back against the wall. The wet brick bit into the man's shoulder blades, and a low groan escaped him, more from helplessness than pain. The lanky one chuckled, his tone dripping with mockery. "Careful, mate. You'll break him before we get anything out of him." He stepped forward, nudging the cane further into the shadows with his boot, as if even the smallest mercy was too generous. The gesture was small, but it was cruel enough to twist the knife of humiliation deeper. Rain poured harder now, bouncing off their jackets and pattering against the puddles like 100 ticking clocks counting down. The alley felt cut off from the rest of the city, the laughter from inside the pub didn't reach here, the music was just a distant thrum. It was the kind of place where bad things could happen without anyone noticing. And then, from deeper in the shadows, something shifted. At first, it was just the sound, a steady rhythm of boots striking the wet ground. Then the figure emerged, framed in the faint glow spilling from the pub's back door. The leather jacket came into view first, the rain glistening on its surface like oil on steel. His shoulders were broad, his posture unshakable, and when the dim light finally caught his face, there was no mistaking him. Jason Statham. He walked forward with the deliberate pace of a man who had no need to rush, because the moment he arrived, the outcome would already be decided. His eyes were locked on the two attackers, and though he said nothing yet, there was something in the set of his jaw and the sharpness of his gaze that told them both the same thing: this ends now. The lanky thug noticed him first, his grin faltering just slightly. "Oi, this ain't your business, mate," he called out, but his voice was missing the earlier swagger. Jason stopped a few feet away, letting the rain run down his face without blinking. His voice, when it came, was calm, steady, but cold enough to chill the marrow. 2 on 1. Against a man who can barely stand. That's brave, real brave. His eyes scanned them both like a craftsman studying flawed material, deciding where to cut. The buzz-cut thug puffed out his chest, trying to reassert dominance. "Listen, pal. Walk away before you get hurt. We're not looking for trouble." Jason tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "See, that's funny, because I am." Before the thug could even register what was happening, Jason's fist shot forward, striking with surgical precision. The punch connected squarely with the jaw, the impact echoing in the narrow alley. The man staggered back, stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. The lanky one roared and lunged, swinging wildly. Jason slipped under the arc of the punch with a fluidity that came from years of training, catching the man's wrist mid-swing. A sharp twist and the thug's yelp cut through the rain, his knees buckling. Jason didn't pause, his boot drove into the man's stomach, sending him crashing against the wall with a wet thud. The buzz-cut thug shook off his daze and charged again, but Jason sidestepped smoothly. The man's own momentum sent him skidding through a puddle, and before he could recover, Jason's leg swept in, kicking him hard at the knee. Pain shot up the man's body, forcing him down onto the wet pavement. Jason leaned in close enough that only the thug could hear him. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of promise and threat. You don't touch him. You don't touch anyone like this. Not ever again. It was enough. Both men scrambled to their feet, slipping on the rain-slick ground as they bolted into the dark, their earlier confidence washed away with the storm water. Jason turned back to the old man, crouching to meet his gaze. You all right, mate? The steel in his voice softened, replaced by genuine concern. The man nodded weakly, though his eyes shone with tears. I didn't think anyone would come. His voice cracked on the last word, the fear still raw. Jason reached for the cane, brushing off the rain with his hand before placing it gently into the man's grip. You'd be surprised how many people care. Just gotta find the right ones. He offered his arm, steady and solid, and the man took it. They stepped out of the alley together. The warm light from the pub spilled across the wet street, casting golden reflections on the pavement. Each step the man took seemed surer than the last, his trembling easing bit by bit. At the bus stop, they waited in silence for the night bus. Jason kept his eyes scanning the street, his stance casual but ready, as if danger could reappear at any moment. The old man glanced sideways at him, still searching for words that could carry the weight of his gratitude. You didn't have to do that. You don't even know me. Jason's lips curved into the faintest smile. Doesn't matter. You didn't deserve it. No one does. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing in the damp night air. Jason helped the man aboard, making sure he was seated safely before stepping back. The doors closed, and the old man kept his eyes on Jason until the bus turned the corner, disappearing into the mist. Jason stood there for a moment longer, the rain still falling, the city around him breathing in its usual rhythm. Somewhere else, cruelty would rear its head again. And somewhere, just out of sight, Jason would be there, waiting.